shall fly on wings of eagles, and you will grow to be straight and tall. This is my promise, this is my blessing. You are the promise, and you are the blessing. Shema B'ni, Shim'i B'ti, Shema B'ni, Shim'i B'ti.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Okay. Zoom has either changed their settings or we have a different subscription now. Maybe we're offered different possibilities, which explains some of last Friday night, which explains right now why something might happen when I'm going to try to reclaim host and see what happens. So I'm the host now. All right. Used to be you could have two, or at least two co-hosts. And Madalena, I assume that you're no longer a host. Is that the situation?
Yes, I can't do anything now other than posting.
Yeah, so I don't know what to do about that. So I don't know that I need the screen today, and I don't know that it concerns everybody who's here. But why don't we get to the text and I wrote you a note. Maybe we can figure this out. Yes, Ella.
Okay.
I have a problem. The last email that you sent did not include the text. So I was able to get on with your code, which starts with 875, which is no problem, but I don't seem to get the text.
Okay, so Madalena will work that out with you, okay?
The last thing I have is register.
Okay. So
Okay, yes, I'll text you, Ella.
Okay, great. Thank you, Madalena, for
You
all
could
this.
include both in when you send out the email.
Okay. All right. We're in chapter 15. And in looking over this text, I trying to find what maybe brings different parts of it together, not only to come up with a title, sometimes witty, this time not so witty. That's what I came up with. But to try to delineate the different units, as I think everybody here by now knows that I do. I did see that there is quite a bit of talking and hearing in this chapter. The heart also plays a major role, but there's something else that I didn't put there that I'm going to ask people to look out for. What might be something that unifies the different sections today, the different, I don't want to call them poems, but yeah, the different sections today, which make this chapter, which gives us at least some idea as to why somebody would group these sayings together. And when somebody comes up with an idea, why don't you just share it with everybody else? Okay, and if nobody comes up with an idea, somebody please remind me at the end. Yes, Roberta, or you already have an answer?
They usually they seem to be aphorisms. They're all of them.
And what's the word that you just used?
Aphorisms.
Yeah, so I don't know what that word means. Sorry.
Me neither.
It could be true what you say, but I just don't know what the word is.
I mean, they're truisms, I guess we'd call them truism things. Things that you accept as being true. I mean, when it says a gentle response allays wrath, I mean, it's obvious that's a better response than getting angry again. I mean, and all of these, a fool spurns the discipline of his father, but one who heeds reproof becomes clever. I mean, all of those seem to be things we know, but you don't think about.
And you find it today more than usual? Is that what you're saying? Or in general, would you have said this 2, 3, 4 weeks ago as well, or
This
anything?
was more so. I
More
didn't
so.
get to my
good.
I didn't get to the last, oh, your second page. Yeah, no, they're all similar.
Okay,
I mean, to me,
right. So that's one of the big questions looming, I think, above wisdom literature in general, above the Book of Psalms, and then afterwards also in the case um, of individual parts, or the part that we're in this section of the Book of Psalms, which are these two liners, these couplets that come, and it's unlike the first section up until I think chapter 9, where it felt like there were lessons, there were lectures that were given on a particular topic with a beginning and a middle and an end here. So that's going to be a question about this. Are these things that we might know otherwise? Is this reinforcing? Look at it. It happens to me because I've been a rabbi for a long time, and a student and a teacher for a long time. I have a lot of ideas. I don't always know where they come from. I can't. I can sometimes tell you where I heard a specific thing, and I quote my teachers from Hebrew University, I think often here. You'll notice, by the way, I never quote teachers from Schechter Institute from the 4 years I was in rabbinical school, and there's a reason for that, whether it's legitimate or not. But most of my serious foundational learning was done at Hebrew University. I don't think you've ever heard me quote one of my rabbis in Kerem B'Yavneh the 5 years that I was in the Hezir Yeshiva either. So that's an interesting thing unto itself. But I don't always know where I know things from. But I've been teaching a lot, and often books that come out in Jewish studies, uh, Sasha and I will read them together. And one book that came out a few months ago, maybe it's already a year by now, Sharon Browse's book, The Amen Effect. So Sasha reads through it right away. She's a fast reader, and she spends all of her time right away. She puts it down. She says, it's nice, but there's really nothing in here I haven't heard from you before. Now, does that mean that the material was stolen from me? Of course not. Does that mean that we were from the same school of thought and rabbinics? Probably yes. But here's the thing. She knows how to put it in writing and to get the book published. To me, that's a wonderful thing. Right? It's not about who said it. I think a lot of us are saying the same kinds of things, but getting it out there, that takes some effort, takes some talent, takes some connections, whatever it might be. And so we might find things, that's back to the book of Proverbs, that we say, oh yeah, like duh, of course. Oh yeah, I knew that. I think a little bit maybe, Roberta, as you're in that direction. But especially for those that can read the Hebrew, it's so eloquently put. And also things that we might think taken for granted, perhaps when Proverbs came into the world, at least from a Hebrew, Israelite / Jewish population, those were really, that's what you say? In other words, we might take something for granted because it's been so absorbed. These Proverbs have been so absorbed into Israeli society. Some of you know that for the Jewish Cooperative of Orange County, I've been doing a parallel series the last few weeks. Rabbi Marcia Tilchin asked me to do something on Proverbs because she knew I was doing this, and one or two of you may actually, I don't know if there's anybody here today, but participate in both. And so I wanted to distill it down into 4 meetings originally. We extended it, but one of the sessions is no, I did it already. The influence of Proverbs on contemporary Israeli society. I first called it the influence of Proverbs on the English and Hebrew world, or literature, something like that. But then I realized I'm not getting anywhere with the English literature stuff. I didn't find things online. I don't have those kinds of books to look it up, although I'm sure somebody's written about it. But I do have a feeling, and I went through chapter by chapter and picked out phrases that I know from life in Israel. The fact that I know them doesn't mean that my children necessarily know them. It was a different generation. I was also in I've traveled in different circles, whether it was as a combat soldier in the army, or whether it was in the yeshiva world, or whether it was in the Zionist Orthodox world. There are phrases that have been taken from the book of Proverbs. So I'm giving that as an example, Roberta. Somebody might see that here. They said, "Oh yeah, of course, that's what we say in Israel." Well, the reason we say it in Israel is because it was in the book of Proverbs, right? So it's a chicken and egg kind of a thing. I'm not saying I hear I'm not saying, and it could be that it's just you and I, all of us, we're part of a tradition of seichel, of common sense, right? There's this common sense, which may not be common sense in other parts of the world, and certainly isn't common sense in all parts of American society, right? Think of how many things we see here that automatically we're thinking, well, yeah, I do that, but how about the other people? They're not doing that, yeah? So this is all good. This is great. This, to me, that's why we're studying this. We're studying to have exactly these kinds of conversations, Roberta. You know, are these obvious? Are these truisms? Does everybody agree upon this? Or do some people say this is nonsense? You know, we've had some conversations over the discipline issue, right? It seems from the book of Proverbs that if the child's misbehaving, you take the stick, you know, you don't spare the rod, right? We had that aphorism not too long ago, sparing the rod. Okay, so but good. Anything else on this before we jump in? Okay, then, excuse me, Roberta, if you would, verses 1 through 4.
A gentle response allays wrath. A harsh word provokes anger. The tongue of the wise produces much knowledge, but the mouth of the dullard pours out folly. The eyes of the Lord are everywhere, observing the bad and the good. A healing tongue is a tree of life, but a devious one makes for a broken spirit.
Now, perhaps also, Roberta, as adults, we say, yeah, we know this, but how do we know this? How do we know this to be true? Or how does this ring true to our ears? I would imagine you agree with me that it's the education we've been given, right?
Or you've had this experience.
Yeah, life experience too as
Life
well.
experience, yeah.
This image of the healing tongue, I love the healing tongue. Think of our tongues and our words, how much damage they do. Us personally, in the world that's out there, the amount of words, but a healing tongue, boy, that to me, that's my holy envy. I want to have a healing tongue. Any impressions, comments? Rita Claire, please.
I don't know about anybody else, but I find that I don't always get my thoughts across unless I get angry. So sometimes what I'm trying to say, it's okay to get angry. You just have to be careful that the anger doesn't come out in harsh words.
What I like to call righteous indignation. That's what I got that from my father, blessed memory. But you know, Rita Claire, just now you got what you wanted to get across. You got it out without any anger. I'm just saying. That last comment, no anger. Roberta.
I think sometimes what happens is someone says something or does something and it provokes an instantaneous response. And if you think about it for at least count to 10, your response will be better than if you immediately say something. Because that happens for me. I jump when I'm pissed about something and I don't think about it. After I've said it, I'm sorry because it was too harsh. So you really need to count to 10 sometimes and think about what would be a better response than the instantaneous, oh shit, you keep saying that. Why do you keep doing that?
Yeah, yeah. Or the golden rule that it took a number of us years to figure out or to put into motion was sleep on that email.
Oh my God, yeah.
Sleep on it, maybe send it the next day or maybe not. Yeah. And so email is one thing but people get swept up with the dialogue in social media, and that certainly happens, right? These back and forth. And sometimes it's good. I like to see, even in text messages with people, it's always interesting to see when you see something, or you wake up in the morning, whatever, and you see something's been deleted, right? I do, at least WhatsApp is like that. I don't know if the other ones are like that as well. where it shows you if somebody has sent something and then they deleted it. And I always like to give them the benefit of the doubt. Whatever it was, they're sorry that they were about to say it. So they unsaid it. But you can't do that in person, Roberta, can you? Yeah, yeah. Anything else?
Well, there is also the eyes of the Lord are everywhere, which is another another reason to be whatever you're doing, someone's watching.
Big Brother is watching,
Big
right?
Brother is
Yeah.
watching you, right?
I used to teach the High Holidays leadership liturgy, B'Sefer Chaim Bracha V'Shalom, the whole thing about the book of life, and may you be inscribed. The Shana Tova Tikatevu Tchatemu, right? May be written in script. This whole book, this whole heavenly scribal kind of things, and I'm sure I've done it with you folks over the years as well. And talking about what does it mean to have this book? Why is a myth of a book in heaven where all your things are being written down? What's the good of that, right? Even though we don't believe that necessarily to be a scientific truth, because it keeps you on your feet. You know, as the Orthodox literature, halachic literature says, and the more popular it is, like Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, Rabbi Shlomo Ganzwei's Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, which a lot of people read because it was translated to English early on, it gives you this feeling that wherever it is, God sees what you're doing, right? That should keep you in line. So I used to say to the kids, oh, this is in the late 80s, when in early 90s, or yeah, and I guess even in there, no, by the aughts I was not, but I was teaching high school, junior high school, and there just started to be cameras in the school. You know, now it's ubiquitous, right? There's cameras everywhere in schools, but it's like, you know, let's say you're all alone in the courtyard, but that camera's on you. You're not going to be picking your nose, are you? If you know that somebody's taking your picture, you're not going to pick your nose. And I said that in a nice way to say, Allah chat kama v'chama, all the more so if you're going to do something really, really nefarious, really evil.
So does
So,
Santa Claus.
yeah, exactly. He knows when you've been good or bad, so be good for heaven's sake. Yeah. That list is being written. Yeah, it's very useful. I mean, this is a different kind of statement than, say, Marx said it. I think it's Marx. I know it's attributed to Marx, I assume it's Marx, but maybe I don't. Somebody else said it. You know, that religion is opium of the masses. It's attributed to Marx, right? Anyway, whoever said religion is the opiate of the masses. So somebody else could have easily said religion is the discipline. You know, religion is the way to keep people out, you know, in line
Mm.
from a social point of view. Anything else? So we'll think of those eyes in the Lord of the Lord as, and just to see the amount of word language is there in the first line, response, second word, third tongue, fourth mouth. And the eyes of the Lord, that's because that's taking us out of human behavior. The Lord is everywhere, observing and bad. That's about the Lord still. And then getting back to human behavior, healing tongue. And what's understood here, not in the word one, but a devious one, meaning a devious tongue, right? It's in the poetic way. So that kind of brings together that section for me. Charles, you want to read 5 to 10 for us?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
A fool spurns the discipline of his father, but one who heeds reproof becomes clever. In the house of the righteous there is much treasure, but in the harvest of the wicked there is trouble. The lips of the wise disassemble knowledge, not so the minds of dullards. The sacrifice of the wicked is an abomination to the Lord, but the prayer of the upright pleases him. The way of the wicked is an abomination to the Lord, but he who loves him who pursues righteousness. But the discipline seems bad to him who forsakes the way. He who spurns reproof will die.
Okay. Any first impressions?
I was upset, not upset. I questioned this line about the sacrifice of the wicked is an abomination to the Lord. I think that's a little bit too general. I mean, a wicked person can ask for forgiveness or make sacrifices, and this line seems to suggest that the wicked only do bad things that the Lord is mad at. If you look at it literally, a wicked person can make sacrifices that are appealing to God.
Mm.
So,
So,
does it mean that God doesn't want to see those? That's what I was questioning.
right, it kind of takes away the possibility of repentance. Is that what you're saying?
Right, right.
Yeah. So when I read this, my impression is that you have people who are doing evil every day, wicked, and yet they'll come and participate in the process of giving, homage to God, to the holy, bringing a sacrifice, and maybe also thinking that they're off the hook because they brought the sacrifice. And I'm being influenced by a number of the prophets that say this in so many words. God doesn't want your sacrifices. God wants you to be a mensch. In other words, or we've brought it up before, and I forget the word. I think Richard, you reminded me when Tony Soprano pays for a new roof of the church. In modern language, what was that called in the Middle Ages? Allowments. You folks know this. It's the people would give donations to
Indulgence?
indulgence, right? Exactly. Indulgence is I'll do something for the church, and the church or God or Jesus will indulge me in whatever whatever narishkeit I'm up to. Yeah, yeah. Yes, Les.
Well, also in this section, it's the whole idea that there cannot be forgiveness without correction.
Hmm.
That you can't just ask for forgiveness or make a sacrifice because you did something evil. You have to actually stop doing the evil.
Right. Mm-hmm. From a literary device point of view, for those that can read the Hebrew, on the right-hand side, you'll see that I bold and underline the word tochachat. So this section starts with the word tochachat yarim, and yeah, and ends with soneh tochachat tochachat. And tochachat here is, we would call it this is in poetic Hebrew of Proverbs. In modern Hebrew, Ella, we would say tochecha, just with a hey and not with a taf at the end. Or in the yeshiva world, tochecha.
It wouldn't it be rebuke?
Yeah, I think, yeah, rebuke or yeah, or rebuke and reproof. I don't know that they're different. Do you think they're different words? They're different
I
meanings?
think they're different.
Doesn't it come from the word from the hochiach?
Right. Lochia, not to, yeah, but yeah. Okay, I look at reproof is not a word I use. I would use rebuke as well. I don't know why they went for reproof, to tell you the truth, but
A reproof is a correction, and rebuke is a scolding.
okay, but they both have the same, let's agree they're both from the same semantic field.
Yeah, right. They're similar, but one you're just correcting, and the other one you're like scolding for having done something wrong.
Okay.
I also found it interesting. I think when Charles read this, he wrote disseminate. I think he said dissemble, which is an entirely different word than disseminate. And I thought that was interesting when I was read. It's just because dissemble means to to tell something untruthfully, and disseminate is to spread out
Okay.
I may have misspoke. It is this.
right. But it was I think, but it was interesting because it's a similar sounding word, but it means something so completely different. And in the context, it was just struck me as very interesting.
The word in Hebrew is izaru from zorea. Zorea is the verb to, I think it's called winnowing, when you throw the grain up in the air and the wind blows away the peel stuff. So you're left with just the grain itself. So it has to do with throwing up, spreading around. Zoreh pachad. yeah, lizrot pachad is to spread panic. Yeah. Okay, anything else about this section? Okay. Rita Claire, you want to do 11, 12?
Okay, Sheol and Abdon lie exposed to the Lord. How much more the minds of men? The scoffer dislikes being reproved. He will not resort to the wise. Did you want me to go on?
No, let's try to look at this. This is its own little unit here, which it's a unit by default. In other words, I could delineate the unit beforehand, and I could delineate the unit afterwards, which left these two couplets, which are a little bit mysterious. They're a little bit I'm not sure I understand them. Sheol and Abaddon. Avadon from the root avad means to be lost. And and this is taken as a mythological place of the afterlife of what happens after you're dead. Sheol, we see many times. There's no hell per se in the Hebrew Bible. There's no purgatory. There is Sheol, which is where you go because it's the netherworld, and they just didn't know. There's not a lot. It's not a place you want to be, but it comes from ancient Semitic mythology, where it is an entity unto itself. And I think that's what the author's done here, taking these two words of death and being lost to the world and turning them, or seeing them, understanding them as proper nouns of entities. What does it mean to be lie exposed to the Lord? Neged Adonai, I don't know if lie exposed, I would have translated something like they're in front of the God. God is aware of them. God, they're right there in front of God. God controls that as well. That's a theological statement, by the way. In other words, these things don't have power unto themselves, like God. They're all part of God's creation, and meaning how much more to the minds of men, I think, is that if God is aware of them, then human beings should certainly be aware of them. Although, even though that's not the case. And the explanation that, or the playing that plays out in the world, where the person who's not being the wicked, the scoffer, is not accepting the reproof. Okay.
Can neged mean against too, though?
Yeah, but I don't. What does that mean? What would that mean here, Rabbi Malka? Would that mean that God? It does mean, it means opposite, against. It also means with. You know, Chava is the woman is Ezer Kenegdo,
Right.
is the helper of the man here, the one opposite of. And I know there's a midrash, of course, the rabbis say, if a man, on the words Ezer Kenegdo, boy, did I hear this at so many weddings, and when I was in the Orthodox world, when I was younger, the rabbi would say that if a man, meaning the groom who's standing in the chuppah, if he has merit, his wife will be a help to him, kenegdo, and help him. And this is Talmudic, right? But if not, then she will oppose him, right? Because it's the same word in Hebrew. So yeah. I don't know, any other wisdom on this particular short poem here?
Nobody likes to be reproved. It's how you take that reproof and who it's coming from. I was thinking about there again about my husband disciplining the children, and they always looked for his approval and was very upset if they had disapproval. And maybe this is how we may feel about God. We always want to do what's right, to seek his approval, and we're disappointed ourselves if we don't get that. I think everybody wants to feel that what they do or say is is the right thing.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. Okay.
It's interesting, Rabbi, you said something about at the chuppah, when a marriage ceremony is being performed, there are sayings that talk about being good, or, I didn't quite understand that. That was kind of interesting.
Somebody will talk about the couple, they're coming together, and bring it back to the creation story and say, what after all is a woman? She's an Ezer Kenegdo, as it says in the book of Genesis. I'm kind of imitating it, paraphrasing. She becomes Adam's helpmeet. That's one of the translations there, right? It's not a partner, it's a helper of. And of course the rabbis of the Talmud would say, well, that word help, it can be against, and it could be help. And if the couple, if the man behaves properly, whatever, then she is a help to him. But if not, or if there's no love proper between you, then she will oppose you. It's objectifying the woman. It doesn't sound natural to you because women in much of that society are objectified, even under the chuppah. And by the way, a ketubah, which everybody celebrates as a marriage contract, is not a marriage contract. A ketubah, traditionally speaking, is a insurance policy for when and if and when the husband decides to divorce his wife, she can say, no, you promised to give me this. If in other words, not no, no. In other words, you can't send me away with that empty-handed. I have 3 chickens, I have 70 shkalim, or whatever's in the ketubah. And that's a central part of a wedding ceremony, right? The reading of the ketubah. That's why it's so absurd, the whole in modern day, to use a traditional ketubah at all, but to read it. And the reason that people get away with it in Israel when they do read the ketubah out loud, because it's in Aramaic, and nobody knows what the hell the rabbi's saying. And if they knew, they would say. And if couples, so I haven't used. I mean, twice I was bullied into it by the couple. Once I knew them and I loved them, and they wanted to have. They insisted on. One other time, they found an egalitarian Aramaic ketubah that they wanted. But I work with couples. It's in Hebrew and English, or Hebrew and Swedish at the time, right? Yes, Ella.
I remember when we got married and we had to have a ketubah, and I think my husband, I don't know, whatever he put in, it wasn't enough money. So the rabbi said, no, that's not enough. So he had to change it.
Right. And
So
that money
like
is that amount is
then.
not related to. In a rabbinical court in Israel, that ketubah is not taken seriously either. There's all sorts of other laws that they get in the way, by the way. So a lot of people would say, I remember when he promises to give her 1 million shekel. I remember saying $1 million, 1 million, 10 million shekel. You put any number you want. It does. Yes, Rita Claire.
Can't help but think, we always said whoever left first had to take the 8 children.
There you go. Okay.
So it's more like a prenuptial agreement.
It's not more. It is. It's essentially a prenuptial agreement, but not in the way. Yeah, it's a one-sided prenuptial agreement to the favor of the woman, usually. It also
usually
says
prenuptial agreements are that's the usual case too with those. I mean,
well, yeah, depending on whether the woman inherits a $1 billion fortune, right? Yeah.
It favors the person without the money, basically.
And it also demands of the husband to provide for his wife in the same document. There's some good things as well, with clothes, with shelter, and with sex. There is no law provision that says the woman has to have sex with the man, but according to those laws of ketubah, the man has to, lack of a better expression, give sex to his wife on a regular basis.
He should also specify in the ketubot about you can't become an aguna.
Well, okay, so that's a more complicated thing, Malka,
Right.
and that has to do with all sorts of things, the Lieberman clause, things that have to do with also things that are connected to Orthodox Judaism, and some conservative rabbis in this country who take this really, really seriously, as if the world hasn't changed. For me, a ketubah is not, and a wedding as well, can never leave a woman an agudah. In other words, that she can't, if the husband refuses to give a divorce, then she can't get married. That's what an agudah is. Yeah. So these questions come up in the state of Israel much more because of the lack of differentiation between church and state. Let's go on to the next one.
Can I ask a question, not to dwell on the ketubah thing or marriage thing, but is there a link between the ketubah and the fact that a dowry has been paid to the woman's family, and that this is sort of in return they get a contract, or no?
Yeah, yes, I think that is connected. Let me see, in the traditional ketubah, is there mention of dowry? No, I don't remember. I don't think so. But it's certainly connected, and you know, the partner of a ketubah, at least in the Ashkenazic world, and I don't remember if it's Sephardic world as well, maybe, but are what we call the Tanaim, the conditions. Do you know any traditional people where they broke a plate? There's a ceremony that they break a plate, not a glass, they break a plate when they do the Tanaim. And that's the decision of who supplies what and gives what, et cetera. Yeah. I'm sure there's scenes in Shtisel or one of those things that you guys love to watch about the meeting before. All right, but we're totally off course. Totally off course. It's my fault, of course. But I want to go back to 13, 17. Rita Claire, why don't you read another one? Because this has a lot to do with the heart, as you'll notice.
A joyful heart makes a cheerful face. A sad heart makes a despondent mood. The mind of a prudent man seeks knowledge. The mouth of the dullard pursues folly. All the days of a poor man are wretched, but contentment is a feast without end. Better a little with fear of the Lord than great wealth with confusion. Better a meal of vegetables where there is love than a fattened ox where there is hate.
So this is a lovely section from Hebrew point of view, and the literary devices that are employed here, which gives it such great form, is the word lev. And lev, which means heart, is in the Hebrew text more that's in the English, because, for instance, if you see mind, first line, second line, heart, third line, mind, well, the Hebrew is lev navod, is lev, because lev, heart, can also mean mind in Hebrew, right? The next one is the mouth is bolden here because of the overall chapter thing, but when you get down to contentment, that's tov tuv lev. All right, it says tov lev, but tuv lev is content. Tov lev is somebody who is content anyway. That I'm not sure why the punctuation, the vowel vocalization is different. In any case, that's contentment is also with the word heart, lev, and better in this case is continuing that idea of better. So you've got three betters at the end. You got, yeah. Sorry. Contentment has the word lev and good in it. So you've got three goods in the end and hearts in the beginning of this. It's a lovely little section. And my favorite part, of course, is the last two lines, which I have to say, I don't think I've ever seen, and which is amazing because, I've been a vegetarian since age 12 and a half. And I sent my good friend, Rabbi Jonathan Klein, who's been a vegan, a very vocal vegan, as most vegans are, very vocal, right? I saw something either in TV in a book where somebody says, how do you know if somebody's a vegan? Do you know the answer to that, anybody? You meet somebody new, how do you know they're a vegan? Because they will tell you within the first half a minute of the conversation. Yeah. No offense to any vegans here, but this is a theological, this is vegan theology here, right? Right, better a meal of vegetables where there's love than a fattened ox where there's hate.
I think the line here that says, better a little fear of the Lord. I think that's very true. There's
So
nothing
here,
wrong with having a little fear.
but I'm not sure that's what I think it reads better.
To be
It's
poor.
better to have a
Mhm.
little, a little fear,
Hmm.
a shtickle fear.
Right.
No, I'm sorry.
No, no,
It's better
poverty.
to have little.
Poverty.
Little
Yeah,
fear.
it's better to have little in life. I'm sorry. A shtickle for what's how you would have read it, but the Hebrew is pretty clear. Tov ma'at. The ma'at here is the opposite of having a lot. It's better. A bit is better. Not a bit of fear, but a bit is better than with the fear, as opposed to, and this is how you know it's a bit is an otsar, a treasure, a great wealth. Um, yeah, with the confusion that comes with it. In other words, when you keep things simple, all the people that any of the people that we know that got very, very wealthy through all sorts of things. I mean, my age bracket, there's people who did well in high tech that I met over the years, younger than I am, and many of them, their lives their lives became more complicated. It doesn't have to be that way, but very often with money comes those complications. Now, of course, what's not said here is with great poverty comes other complications. And maybe they're not as sexy to talk about. They're not as interesting to talk about, but yeah.
So you
Any
think
other
you think it has more to do with that phrase with wealth,
yeah,
money?
I think that's the contextual meaning here.
Huh.
Because you take it as a couplet. There's two lines here. And also the ma'at little, the way it's in Hebrew doesn't modify the word fear.
Right.
It
I
says
didn't get that, I'm afraid. So, okay.
so a little, a little bit. If we go back to the English, I'm going to embellish this a little. It is better to have a little bit of wealth with the fear of the Lord than to have a lot of wealth with all the confusion that comes with it.
Hmm.
Yeah, you're missing that little connective.
Right.
Okay, all right.
And I say call your may ane. That seems really oh, that a poor person all his days are wretched. Just
Hmm.
because you're poor doesn't make you have a wretched life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So let's see. Let's see. Let's try to look at it as a couplet, the same way we did the previous one. So.
Mhm.
Um, it could be read, a life of poverty is bad, but if you have gladness of heart, or in this case contentment,
Mhm.
then that's it. Then you won't feel the poverty. It'll be an endless feast.
Right.
It's not a judgment of a poor person to say that he's a bad person. I don't think that's what this is about. This is a recognition of many people do not have wealth, live in poverty, and it is something that could be understood as tone deaf today by saying, well, you need to change your attitude, right? You should be happy with what you have. And there are people that might do that for themselves, but oy vavoy if any of us go to somebody who's living on the street and say, well, you should be happy that you can get a free meal down the street at Well in the Desert. Look at this came up. I was meeting with one of the city council members this morning, and for those that follow the local news, there's a lot of joy and pride in the fact that we have here in Palm Springs a center for the unhoused, some of which is for that night to stay. I think it's 70 beds, and then there's some permanent, semi-permanent housing. There's a center near the airport where if you find somebody, I've come across people on the street that need immediate help, but what they really need is a place to get a meal. And so you can help them get to, I think it used to be a boxers club or something. There's this little building across the street from the airport. There's a lot of good things happening, but at the city council meeting where they reviewed this, there were some of the clients of the center. And the center the running of the center is being outsourced. The center belongs to Palm Springs, but the work is being outsourced to one of the local nonprofits. And there were complaints about the food, it's not nutritious, and I remember being brought back to thinking back to Abigail, our third daughter, who was living in San Francisco, and she was working at a coffee house in an area where there were lots of homeless. And she said they would go outside towards the end of the day and give whatever food was left over to the people that were homeless on the outside. And she remembers she was new in America. She remembers giving it to somebody, a sandwich. And he looked up, he says, is this organic? He says, on the other hand, maybe we need to say, yeah, maybe there's a little bit of, I feel we all need to improve our sensitivity. And so the reaction of many of the council members was to say, well, let's see if that's actually true, as opposed to somebody who said, well, let's look into this. Let's take this seriously and look into it, instead of being skeptical about it. And all that comes, to me, that comes from that same world of, let's be careful how we relate to people who are really, really poor. Now, if somebody who's really poor comes up with, you hear people, especially they talk about how they grew up. Yes, but we were very happy with what we had. Or somebody said to me recently, I asked if they grew up poor because of a story. And they said to me, but our parents never let us feel that. We realized that afterwards, but our parents never let us feel that. So those are things that people can say themselves, but all of us need to be really careful when we say it to somebody else, right? It's like somebody, I learned this early on, some woman whose couple's trying to have a baby and the woman miscarries after miscarriage. And to say something like, well, don't worry, you're still young, there'll be time, I'm sure you'll get pregnant soon. That's not the right thing to say. The right thing to say, I learned early on, is that sucks. I'm so sorry, that sucks. Let them talk about the optimism, unless they ask you. Anyway, again, way off topic, I guess, but maybe not. Anything else on this section?
I had an interesting experience when we had a cafe. We had this man who would come in on a daily basis, who was homeless, and he would pick weeds, flowers somewhere, and he would sell them. Anyways, he would come in, and we want to give him the cup of coffee, and sometimes he took it, and sometimes he wanted to pay for it. I thought that was a really interesting experience, that when he was able to make some money selling his weeds that he pulled, he wanted to have the dignity of being able to pay for his cup of coffee.
So that to me, a story like that, Rita Clara, is a way for me to reflect on my own behavior when and it's not just financial, it's with other stuff, what we call savior syndrome, salvation syndrome. I think it's called rescuer syndrome. In therapy stuff, there's the person that wants to come in and be the hero. Not everybody wants you to be their hero, right? Many people need to negotiate on their own terms.
Another interesting thing, he was a very bright man. He would come in, and our workers would laugh and say, Mr. C, here comes your broker, because he knew all about the stock market. And he would have long conversations with my husband about the stock market. It's really interesting when you take the time to know someone like that. Why he chose to live on the street, that was a mystery.
Okay, Les, why don't you do 1922 for us?
A hot-tempered man provokes a quarrel, a patient man calms strife. The way of a lazy man is like a hedge of thorns, but the path of the upright is paved. A wise son makes his father happy, a fool of a man humiliates his mother. Folly is joy to one devoid of sense, a prudent man walks a straight path. Plans are foiled for want of counsel, but they succeed through many advisors.
Yeah. If you had to choose a word or a title for this section, can anybody come up with one? A little bit hard. Maybe the right path. It's not just that path, the thorns, but the right path in being a child, the right path in walking in general, and planning, taking counsel.
What do you make of the dichotomy of a wise son making his father happy, but a fool humiliating his mother?
Now, I knew somebody bring it up, but can you guess what I'm going to say?
Well, we usually talk about wisdom as being female, but I don't think that's it.
Right.
Uh,
So I think it's just a parallelism here.
Mhm.
And yes, it's easy to give that parallelism because more often than not, a father is more feared than the mother.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that from a literary point of view, it's just a way to it's a way to talk about your folks.
Family. Yeah.
So yeah, that
But
But would it mean
it's
something
just that
different?
they could have switched it around though. You probably would never seen the Tanaka wise son makes his mother happy and a fool of a man humiliates his father. You probably wouldn't see that though.
probably not because of the reality of the time. Yeah, I think. But I think essentially it does mean parents from whence you come.
Mhm.
You know, in that opening statement of the book towards the beginning of the book, like the Craig Taubman song that we start now with, that we have his permission to use, is Shma bani musar avicha v'al titosh torat imecha. Listen, my son, to the ethics, discipline, musar, that word musar that keeps coming up, of your father, and do not abandon the Torah instruction of your mother. There, it's just a simple parallel, right? Musar and Torah, Chokhmah, it's all. The thing that brings us here could be that this also has the word lev. The chasar lev is one who's devoid of sense. That word lev has lots of meanings, a lot of internal used. Interesting to know. It's here and so many different ways it went, and rarely it's about love. Not rarely, but certainly not specifically about love, as it seems to be in the English language. You want to do another one, Les?
Sure. A ready response is a joy to a man, and how good is a word rightly timed. For an intelligent man, the path of life leads upward, in order to avoid Sheol below. The Lord will tear down the house of the proud, but he will establish the homestead of the widow. Evil thoughts are an abomination to the Lord, but pleasant words are pure.
Okay. Now, if you have a belief already in Olam Haba, the world to be Shamayim, Gan Eden, heaven, the Garden of Eden, if you have that belief already, then you see this line that says, Ora Chaim Lamala Lamaskil, that for an intelligent man, the path leads upwards, and then coupled with, in order to avoid going to Sheol, in other words, be good so you go to heaven, don't, instead of being bad and going to hell. If you have those beliefs, then that's how you read it. But those beliefs aren't in the time, they're not documented unless you use this as basis for that. And I'm sure there's scholars that do. But according to most scholars, the idea of going to heaven, going upwards to heaven, of the soul, that comes later in the development of the Israelite culture / Judaism. That comes later, and it draws from the same world that Christianity draws from, which is the Greco-Roman ideas of where one goes, where God resides. Although we do talk about our Avinu Shebashamayim, our Father who's in heaven, which is just as Jewish as it is Christian, but it's not where the soul goes necessarily. Still, and this just could be in that transitory time. The book of Proverbs, although this part is probably earlier, still it was edited sometime in the Hellenistic period. So we're talking 4th, 3rd century BCE, probably. So that's an interesting aspect here.
What's the area in Jerusalem that is sort of referred to as a sort of a hell?
Yeah.
a valley.
Guy Hinnom, Guy Ben Hinnom, the gorge, the valley of Hinnom.
And how does that relate to Sheol?
They're actually two different things. Later it became the basis for the word Gehinnom or Gehenna. In Yiddish, Gehinnom is hell. But when that changed, if that's Middle Age, if that's rabbinic, I don't remember, but it's not biblical. And what I remember is that area is where they buried the dead of Jerusalem. And so I think there was an idea that it was thought to be haunted, kind of a thing. And maybe
Isn't that the place where Menashe put his children into the fire too?
Yeah, and whatever that means, did they dance over the fire or were they burned? You probably remember there's a debate there as well. But that there's a distance between there and thinking of it as a hell of kind of a place from one of those paintings. Who is it? Salvador Dali or whoever who has those paintings of what goes on in hell. Okay, but so
Dante.
Sorry, Dante. Thank you. So we got 2 minutes and we're gonna we'll do the next section next week. We'll start with, and I'll put out another document. But let's just remember I asked what comes up in almost all these poems. There's one poem that doesn't come up. Is the Lord. It's God. This is a real theological chapter. And that comes up from time to time. We often have, sometimes some of this just feels totally secular, totally cultural, and not theological. But these units, I'm just going to call them poems. It's easy for right now to call them these poems, these individual poems, if I'm correct in how I delineated them one way or another, they all of them except for one bring up God, and that this wisdom is not just common sense. It's not just how you run society, but God is involved in this as well. And that's an interesting topic in general for our study of of Proverbs. It does come up, as opposed to Psalms, where God is everywhere, almost in every single psalm, if not. It reminds me. I gave a lecture, a class on this last Shabbat in Santa Monica on Song of Songs, which I don't think you folks have probably ever heard me talk about. Song of Songs, maybe once on Pesach or twice we did a study, but it gave me a chance to come up with a new lecture, a new idea perhaps for a course, a study course. But one of the things that Song of Songs also is, it's poetry, it's erotic love poetry that was understood as allegory of the relationship between God and the people of Israel during rabbinic times, which most people say is why it got in, not everybody, but how it got into the canon, the biblical canon, because God is not mentioned at all there. So I did see in one of the commentaries that Mishle was also almost not incorporated into the canon, but in the footnotes he referred. Maybe I told you so. In the footnotes, he referred to another scholar of like the 19th century or something, or maybe early 20th century. So I looked into that and I saw that this guy he said what he said. He said, well, of course, Proverbs was barely got into the Jewish canon. Well, I wasn't able to find ancient sources for that. Song of Songs, there seemed to be a Song of Songs in Kohelet and Ecclesiastes, there seemed to be a lack of agreement over whether they should be. And even that, the discussion of it is very roundabout, very open. Okay. Any final words? So thanks for being here. Next week we'll meet next week, and then we're going to take a break for Pesach a little bit. I need a break. I need to get something written that I keep putting off that I promised to write for a book. Believe it or not, I just have a hard time believing it. And but I did promise. And then we'll start with verse 27 next week and go on to the next chapter as well.
What chapter are we in case I don't get the notes?
Okay, this is chapter 15.
15.
So 15 and 16. And we'll start 16 next week. We'll finish 15.
Are you skipping 1 week or 2?
I'll probably at least 2.
Okay.
Yeah. We'll put out in Tuesday. We'll let people know exactly. We just didn't get that far. We're still struggling with our our link and who gets to be host. Madalena keeps saying, I'm host, and I say, I'm host, and he says, I'm host.
I think I finally figured it out. So
Okay, well,
next
thank
week.
you. Thanks for helping us with this and everything else. Good to see everybody.
Thank you.
Won't see you tomorrow. The class in gospel according to John is over. We're going to send out a survey for those that participate in that to get your ideas of what we do going forward. And if I don't hear or see from you, have a wonderful Pesach, everyone.